As a child, I loved the swimming pool. To this day, I love a swimming pool. I got to relax beside one a couple of weeks ago. The weather was warmer. The skies were a kind of blue we don't see much of this time of year in Virginia. And because the place was deserted, do you know what I did? I did a cannonball. It was a can opener, to be exact, a running can opener. Had there been a crowd, I think I would have asked on a scale from 1 to 10, how did I do? I want to talk about the Sermon on the Mount and the moment in that sermon when Jesus does a cannonball, a running cannonball into the stuff that is always with us. You could say that this gospel lesson for this week is about murder, adultery, divorce, and swearing. You could say that the gospel lesson for this week is actually about what is behind or underneath each of those acts. You could say that this is Jesus laying out an ethic for his followership or demonstrating his credibility when it comes to the interpretation of Torah. All of that is true. And yet, spiritually lazy. Lazy because I can say all of that after looking into the matter for about 15 minutes without ever looking into me, without ever getting into the water. It's tempting. I want to try and speak to the stuff that is always with us, though. I've made the decision to hone in on the last of the 4 teachings that are here, if for no other reason than the fact that the 4th teaching is sort of like a 4th child. It's fending for itself down at the bottom of the page we are spent by the time we ever get to it. Again, you have heard it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you have made to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear. Not by heaven, not by earth, not by Jerusalem, not by your head, not at all. This is one of those times when the mantra, Jesus said it, so that settles it, just won't do. Mostly because it isn't so clear. We hear swear and hear one thing. Our spiritual ancestors heard swear and heard something altogether different, and that is to say nothing of God's point of view. Way back when, to swear was to associate God with what one wanted others to do or to believe about the one doing the swearing. So, if I wanted you to buy my camel, I might swear that the camel was X numbers of years old and that he was a real trooper about carrying this amount of weight. With God as my witness, I might say this camel is a thoroughbred. But here's the thing, and it's an important thing. The swear took on falsehood not at the point at which I failed to tell the truth about the age of the camel and the size of the load it can carry, though that was certainly unlawful, but at the point when I told you what I told you for personal gain. The falsehood seeped in when I put my need for you to see me as the offer of a good thing over and above the well-being of both the camel and you, the new owner. Because we don't sell camels, it's easy to play the observer. I don't swear falsely. I don't even use the word swear, we think, from our poolside lounge chair. But what if Jesus could care less about the swearing and cares immensely about what the swearing was supposed to guard against? What if the prohibition against swearing was, by original design, a protective measure given our human tendency to set in motion things that end in deadly conflict? Because in an honor-shame society, false swearing could land people in a place of needing to reaffirm their honor. If your honor was tarnished when I sold you that lemon of a camel and you felt compelled to restore it, and the action you took to restore that honor escalates the conflict, we have effectively gone where swearing was supposed to keep us from going. Over time, I can imagine us honing those roles. I work on defending myself against the accusations of false swearing, citing the fact that I didn't actually swear to God, but rather on something else. Therefore, what I did wasn't a violation of the community guidelines. And meanwhile, you go to workshops to learn how to listen for the telltale phrasing that people like me use when I want to get my way without getting in trouble. When we could have gotten together and thrown a monkey wrench into the whole machine. You see, if murder was a cover for not having dealt with conflict, if adultery and divorce was a cover for not having dealt with conflict, if swearing falsely was a cover for not having dealt with conflict, Jesus here in the heart of his sermon is saying, deal with it. Deal with it. And since y'all, I'm speaking from Jesus' point of view, have lost sight of the fact that Torah is a gift from God to keep the machinations of deadly conflict at bay, let me interpret the Torah in a way that will shine a light on where the dealing with it starts. I don't have to swear on Jerusalem on a camel's worth for this fourth teaching to reach me. I think I'm guilty of what the ancients called swearing falsely when I associate God with whatever it is that I do instead of dealing with conflict. With God as my witness, my anger is righteous. With God as my witness, that relationship is beyond repair. With God as my witness, the things that we tell ourselves can be a cover for what we haven't dealt with. You and I aren't Jesus' primary audience. Matthew tells us that Jesus was speaking to his first disciples and to some others who wanted to be there. That said, God is speaking to us through Jesus, who leaves us with this. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one. It's tempting to reduce this fourth teaching to the importance of being a man or woman of our word. But when there are conversations that we haven't even committed to having, that too could be said to come from the evil one. For our yes to mean yes and our no to mean no, we have to have gotten in the water. This presumes that we are really dealing with the conflicts that, if unattended, lead to death, the death of people, the death of relationships, the death of covenant-shaped community. In 1939, Time magazine featured the two most influential women in America. One was Eleanor Roosevelt, the other Dorothy Thompson. Dorothy Thompson, the American journalist, the first American journalist to be expelled from Nazi Germany. She said, "Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of creative alternatives for responding to conflict. Alternatives to passive or aggressive responses, alternatives to violence." God has long been the giver of creative alternatives. Sure, we humans have a track record of not taking God up on those offers, but the day Jesus preached his Sermon on the Mount, he wasn't looking out over a bunch of shady used camel salesfolk. He saw the gift that he wanted to give and people precious to God whom he longed to give that gift. He saw the kingdom. And he saw us putting on the reign of God, wearing it, graciously stretching it out that others might see there was plenty good room. He saw us liberated, free to step off the slippery slopes that lead to unnecessary harm. He saw us dealing with it. Jesus sees us dealing with the anger that we have not allowed ourselves to fully feel, or the anger that we have nursed too long. He sees us attending to the little breaks in our relationships before they become gulfs, which might entail offering to be there as others express their anger. God with us sees us no longer trying to get one up on each other as though the point of life is to die on top of the pile. Then, as now, Jesus is seeing us into what he knows is true, truer than anything we might want to call on God as our witness to convey. Through his life and ministry, death and resurrection, a holy wrench has already been thrown. God has done a cannonball into the pool that is our fear of conflict, our avoidance of conflict, our engaging conflict in ways that make a mockery of those trying to live out the blessedness of peacemaking. And in doing that cannonball, God has transformed the waters and invited us to do more than stay afloat, the lover of our souls, the one who sees and provides the way from where we are to where all of creation flourishes, is in the deep end, offering us a creative alternative. We can swim, and we can swim like there is joy in the things that are always with us, joy in the struggle, because there is.